Hey guys, Desolator Magic here, and I just wanted to make a quick video clarifying something that I've mentioned a ton of times, but not fully explained in a bunch of other videos. This is a pretty good MTG tip, but it sounds a lot more useful and powerful up front than when you actually understand it. It is still certainly worth learning, and it's the rule of 3, as I call it. Now, whether your deck has like 20 lands or like 24, that's the typical range. I know like Modern can get weird, it can go down to like 8 or like 0. You got a Legacy and Vintage, God, Charbelcher has 1, but in a normal standard deck, 20 to 24 is the typical amount. I would even say 21 to 24. So, assuming that you wouldn't start the game with 0 or 1 lands, and you could start with 2 or 3 or 4, in general, by the time the game starts, about 1/3 of your deck is lands. So at any given point, in order to get to one additional land, it's going to take 3 turns. That's because of simple probability. So you're probably thinking, oh, that's a nice little tip. It's good to keep in my mind. I really hope I draw my way out of this 2-land hole. Well, it's probably going to take 3 turns, unless you scry or draw. And, obviously that interrupts it completely. But you could just enter that into the number. You're going to have to draw 3 cards in order to pull 1 land on average. Now, certain cards tweak this amount, and if you do the math, they tweak it a lot. Let's say you ran 4 Evolving Wilds and 4 of one copy of a fetch land. Well, every time you use one, it already counts as a land in the deck, obviously, but then it goes to get another land out of the deck, so it effectively, like when you drop in a fetch land or an Evolving Wilds, which is, basically a fetch land, it will reduce the number by 2. Or I should say, not when you play it, when you pull it. When you pull off the top of your deck an Evolving Wilds, then it reduces the count by 2 because here's 1, and then it goes to get another one. So let's take one scenario where you started a game with 3 land, which is, a little high, but honestly a little bit more comfortable than 2, so I certainly never mind it. And we'll say there's 21 lands in the deck, and then your very first turn you draw 1 card and it's Evolving Wilds. So Evolving Wilds would be your 4th land. So it's turn 1, you don't need the mana, you drop the Evolving Wilds, immediately sacrifice it, go fetch another land, drop it into play out of your library. Well, at that point, with the 3 in your hand, the 1 now in your graveyard, the Evolving Wilds, and then the 1 you fetched, you're down to 16 lands and 52 cards, or actually 51 cards in the deck. That means that there is approximately a 31% chance that your next card will be a land. Now, usually I use hypergeometric distribution, but, 1, my internet's still knocked out, and 2, this is such an insignificant sequence that, if you don't draw it, it's almost the same number. So you could basically say you have a 31% chance every single time that you draw a card. Basically, it would be 16 divided by 50. If you miss the next one, it only rises to 32%. So if you just remember 33.3%, it's 1 in 3. That's the easiest way to do the math. Now let's go to the flip side. Instead of, having enough mana and then immediately pulling mana, which, that happens to everybody, you started with 2 with the exact same deck, same setup. Turn 1, you flip up a card that's not a land. In that case, your very next card, the probability of it being a land, is 36.5%. So you would be going from absolutely land flooded, I guess. It could be worse, but we'll just say land flooded in a 21 land deck to, oh my gosh, I only have 2, I hope I draw my way out of it. Now, if you think about it, you've got your first turn, your second turn, and you could do a land drop that's already in your hand, and then to get the third one, it's your third draw. There you go, no problem. Or at least if you went second, that would be true. So obviously 3 card draws is a really small sample size to say yes, consistent probability, but in general you will pull a land within 3 pulls. It could be the first one, could be the second one, could be the third one. Now you guys who are a little bit into probability already know that you cannot cumulatively count it. If you have probability of the next 3 shots at it, but 1 or 2 of them have already been determined, you don't maintain the same odds as before you started getting results. So let's say you're just locked in, okay, 33.3%. You got a 1 in 3 shot of getting a land. First one you don't draw. Well, now your second card you have 2/3 of a chance, right? And then your third card you have a 100% chance. Okay, obviously that doesn't even sound right, so yes, that's not how it works. If you miss the first land draw, your probability of pulling a land on the next card is about 33%. If you miss the one after that, it's about 33%. If you miss the one after that, it's about 33%. It goes up slightly because, there's still, we'll say, 19 lands left in the deck and you're reducing the deck size by 1 every time, but it's like 1% difference. So at least your odds are going up slightly, but just remember, it's not cumulative odds. If you're hoping to draw a land in the next 3 turns and your first 2 don't do it, you're no more likely to draw it on the 3rd turn than when you started. Well, actually, depending on how you look at it, you're extremely less likely than when you started. Now, if you have a card that says draw 3 cards, that's simultaneous. Boom, boom, boom. All of them are results in a row, and there it is. One of those should be a land. I know it seems weird, but that's how probability works. So it seems like no matter what the condition is, no matter what, is going on, you're within a couple percent of 1 in 3 at all times. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, what about your Superland Junior deck, the new version of it, Green Superheroes? By turn 8, you have 100% of the lands on the battlefield. None of them are left in your library. That's the point. You don't want to naturally draw a land. You want to go get it. If you did, you'd have landfall, but you've got like 15 lands on the field at that point, so you really don't want to pull one of the like 7 remaining lands or whatever, because you want to start spending the mana on cards, because you probably cast your entire hand at that point. Worst case scenario, you do top deck one of those lands, drop it in, and get a nice landfall effect that buys you time. So there are decks that don't follow this rule, but it has to do with either starting with nowhere near the normal amount of lands, or getting an artificial number of lands out of your deck. So this is interesting, and it's good to know, I guess, during gameplay. It barely even affects gameplay. It's more just, like, a way to understand what's happening, I guess. But there is an enormous strategy that people are screwing up so badly in Modern, and it's the card Path to Exile. You exile a target creature that an opponent controls, I assume. Actually, no, I think you can hit your own. I don't know. I don't have the internet right now. By the way, the ISP is sending a technician in, like, 30 minutes, so I'm trying to rush this recording. Anyway, you cast Path of Exile usually on an opponent's creature, and then they get to, if they want, go get a basic land out of their deck and drop it onto the battlefield. So you're all proud of yourself. Oh boy, you got rid of one of their threats. That's awesome. So what if they got a basic land on the field? That's just a side effect because, the spell only costs 1, and so they had to put a drawback, right? But it's totally unimportant. Well, you're probably catching my drift. From what I said already, no, that's not true. Although there is a catch, and I'll get to that at the end. No matter how you look at it, you just progressed them 3 turns into the future. They are now 3 turns ahead of you, but only in their mana base. I mean, obviously they weren't summoning creatures and spending their 2/3 mana the entire time. If they were truly 3 turns ahead of you, you would be dead. But from a mana standpoint, from a land drawing standpoint, you just put them ahead 3 turns. Now the only question is that even important? Well, the answer could be yes and the answer could be no, and it really depends on the circumstances. So anybody who tells you it's absolutely always unimportant or absolutely always critical, they're wrong in both cases. If they have really critical cards or even just a high volume of cards that cost 3, but they started the game with 2 lands, and now they're both on the battlefield, and there's nothing that they can do because they're completely out of lands. They really need that 3rd land, while you just gave it to them. A lot of people make the mistake, because they don't understand how probability works, where they say, oh, well, they didn't draw a land, now they're, telling you that they're land screwed because they're a friendly player and they like to tell you what's going on. It's going to take them from that point onward 3 turns on average to draw it. It's not, oh, they missed 2 land draws, they're overdue for 1. There's like a 99% chance the next card will be a land. No, it's always 1 in 3. Whether they pulled a land or didn't pull a land, it's always approximately 1 in 3. So whether you path them on turn 1 or path them on turn 50, they just accelerated 3 turns in their mana base. Obviously, this isn't true if they're playing that one deck with only 8 lands in it, but like I said, this is just in general. So that alone might have lost you the game, because they could have been able to do very close to, if not equal to, nothing on their turn until they get that 3rd land draw, which on average would have been in 3 turns, and within the variance of probability, more than 3 turns. Now, less than 3 turns, okay, but more than 3 turns if it was going to be 4 or 5, oh my gosh, you could have won the game. They could have just been sitting there doing nothing. So yeah, Path to Exile likes to unmana screw your opponent, and that is just really stupid under the circumstances where it would turn the whole game around for them. Here's the thing though, mana fixing and mana percentages and mana fetch are really tuned in Modern. If somebody builds a 20 land deck and almost everything in the deck that's important costs 3, they're an idiot. So you shouldn't have to be like responsible for digging them out of the hole that they're in on a regular basis. The vast majority of the time, the amount of lands that is in their deck results in a proper opening hand, or they would have mulliganed until they had a proper opening hand with a proper amount of lands. So it's rarely as detrimental as the example that I gave, but it does happen. Now here's the thing. Just because your whole deck costs 2 and nothing in your deck costs 3 doesn't mean you don't want to get to 4 mana, okay? 4 mana means that you can play a creature and a mana leak, for example. So even sending them from 4 to 5, they can cast a 2 and a 3 combo now, or 5 to 6. Well, now they can cast 3 2-cost spells, 2 3-cost spells. So you never know how much you're accelerating them by doing this. So obviously, if you just slowed them down by removing one of their creatures, and then you sped them up by letting them cast more creatures than they would have been able to, you basically did nothing. I mean, unless they summon a less important creature than was out on the battlefield. And that could be, but at 3 land, but now they're at 4 land, probably the one they're casting now is more important, theoretically. Now, if you know their entire deck configuration, aka if they're a net decker, you know when they throw a Kitchen Finks, it doesn't matter if you exile their Kitchen Finks and give them 10 lands. You need to get rid of Kitchen Finks. But sparing any kind of situation like that, in general, you might be helping them out more than you're hurting them. I mean, all you really effectively did in the worst case scenario is bought yourself 1 turn. Here's the thing though, if you're extremely certain that their deck configuration and their current hand state doesn't give a crap if they have another land on the field because it doesn't make an ounce of difference, then path something. If you're not sure, you could path it anyway and then, give them another land, but, you don't want to make the mistake, find out, and then, lose the game and then go into the second match and not do it again. What I've seen a lot of people do, and this is just incredibly stupid, it shocks me every single time. I bring out something pretty important, like a meddling mage, where it's a 2/2 for 2 wizard, and I name a card, and the card can't be cast. So I'll name Tarmogoyf for whatever, something kind of important that I suspect is probably in their deck. So they're at 20 life, and I'm at 20 life, and they path it. So they certainly could have just waited a couple turns, got hit a couple times, or bring out a 3 toughness blocker. I mean, that basically shuts the creature down. Maybe they didn't even have a Tarmogoyf in their hand. Maybe they didn't even have a Tarmogoyf in their deck, and they still path to exile my wizard because they've got this, oh, I'm playing modern, it's fast, 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 0 mistakes, everything is super, super rapid, and everything has to be as fast as possible. So they're at full 20 life, I bring out something that's not even threatening, and then they path it, just because now they're absolutely dominating. They're dominating the board state, because maybe I had a creature out, they had a creature out, oh, but now they can start hitting me. So what? Then next turn I'm going to be at 18, you're going to be at 20. That's not even close to winning. Hell, I could have gone down to 18 with my own shockland and I wouldn't give a crap. So in a case where you're not sure, I mean, you could wait 2, 3, 4 turns and see if they bring out something better, see if you really should have, exiled the creature a little bit earlier. I mean, it's not like you could do it in response to a combo, but giving them an extra land that they might need to just utterly stomp you and get a combo off, that's immediately going to lose you the game. So when it comes to Path to Exile and land percentages and how many turns it usually takes to pull their 3rd land or 4th land or 5th land, I would just be really, really, really careful. Also, if you missed your first 2 land draws, remember, the 3rd one is not any closer than the first 2 were. I mean, yes, 1%, but whatever. Remember those 2 things, and hopefully you'll do better at Modern. Well, and Standard as well, because hey, everything uses lands. So that's your tip for the day, and I'll see you guys next video.